on Hong Kong boards. We are honored to have Mr. Mohan Datwani, who is a solicitor and a deputy chief executive of the Hong Kong Institute of Chartered Secretaries and a member of the Equal Opportunities Commission. And myself, I'm Jackie. I'm a PhD candidate in history here at HKU, researching Chinese female entrepreneurs in Republican China. So I'm very excited to hear the presentation today. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the co-sponsors of the event, the HKU Gender Studies Program and the Gender Plus Seminar Series of the Women's Studies Research Center at HKU. So thank you to the co-sponsors. So let me introduce Mr. Mohan Datwani. As I said before, he's a solicitor, he's an accredited mediator and a governance professional. He's had a long-standing career in the legal profession. He's been a global partner of a leading US international law firm and a general counsel of a listed company. He's currently the Deputy Chief Executive and a fellow of the Hong Kong Institute of Charter Secretaries and the Charter Governance Institute. So in this seminar, he's going to present sort of the different perspectives that were gathered for the report on different stakeholders in the writing of this report on gender diversity on Hong Kong boards, and how Hong Kong compares to other markets, and also look at the importance of addressing gender diversity in board membership. So I'm really looking forward to his presentation. So please welcome Mr. Datwani, and now I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you, Jackie, so much. Gina, you don't have to do that. And I was going to thank Gina for bringing me along. This whole thing came about because my sister, Datwani, dragged me into this. So I had no choice since she was my sister. And she's the most learned person in our family. She's got a PhD and I only have 2 masters, actually 3 masters. Okay. I was asked to choose the topic. I was struggling between transgenderism and its protection under Hong Kong's equal opportunities law, or a more general paper about gender diversity. I chose the gender diversity topic because there is something on the horizon. The stock exchange is actually likely to be onto this topic and wanting to do some enhancement of gender diversity on Hong Kong boards, because everyone recognizes that the position is pretty bad. So therefore, I started to talk about doing this with Lee Chong, Jackie, Gina, Georgina, and Daya, and thankfully, they were not against the idea of talking about this. Today, that we actually have a very special guest on this particular group, which is Sophia Cao. She is actually the former chairman of the Women's Commission. She actually also wrote about this topic in 2011 to the Stock Exchange. And we have not moved much on the needle. So, Sophia, thank you so profusely for being here today. It is a real privilege and honor for me to be speaking in front of you. Let me start with the slides. Now, if you start looking at this slide, how many females are there? There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And how many males are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you would actually see that this is more of an aspiration. That we should have a parity of a board, given that there are 50%, actually they're 52% female, right, or 48% male, or is it the other way around? I don't know, but given that we really should have 50-50. Here we actually see that there is a missing element, which is on the board of directors of listed companies. There's actually a lot less female. So this whole picture that we designed is about bringing the female on board. And therefore you would see this particular diagram that we chose. April Chen, who was the former company secretary of CLP Holdings, and who's our fellow, actually chose this particular picture and she designed it. So I actually have to thank her as well. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. So all the views herein are personal to me. The contents are not intended to be legal or professional advice. And please feel free to distribute this report to everybody. And actually, you will also see a barcode on this particular page. This particular page is the report, the actual report, which is much longer. that me and Peter Greenwood, who is also a former executive director of China Light and Power, wrote. So let's get to the meat of the topic. And oh, I need to also express gratitude to a lot of people. In writing a report, the Institute supported me, which is the Hong Kong Institute of Chartered Secretaries. This would actually be renamed the Hong Kong Chartered Governance Institute in July, because we actually perform a governance function. There's also BlackRock. BlackRock has around 7 trillion US under its asset management. There's also Freshfields. I don't know, but I think most of you would know Teresa Cole. So she is iconic on the topic of gender diversity. There's also 30% Club, the Women's Foundation, Brunswick, Community Business, New World Development, Egon Center, Bank Consortium Trust, and Link REIT that supported this particular paper. There's actually also other heroes, including Adrian Chang, who is New World Group's heir, Nick Allen, who's from Link REIT, Egon Center, we've got New Waters, etc. So they're all set out in the report. It's very hard for me to thank all of them, but you know, I'm really grateful for this massive support by these really important people in putting together this paper. Now, setting the stage, the first thing is, you know, when we talk about gender diversity, that in itself is not really the topic. The real topic is actually diversity for listed company. Why is diversity important? Because it's a business proposition. It is also a compliance issue. So I actually took out a quote from the research report from this gentleman. This gentleman is Mr. Amar Gill. Amar Gill is Managing Director and Head of Investment Stewardship, APAC of BlackRock. And in the report, he actually set the scene. He actually said that we should start moving from talk to action. I don't know, there was actually a saying that talk is cheap, but I like to talk. But Amar is actually a really clever individual. So let's just read what he says. And I do apologize, but you know, I will be basically reading the excerpts from all these quotes that are actually in the report, which basically is to help you to read the report. So a call for action, and this is from Amar Gill, Managing Director of BlackRock Stewardship Group. And he says, boards that lack diversity are exposing themselves to significant risks. A key responsibility of the board is oversight of management, which includes ensuring that the company identifies, addresses, and monitors the risk to its business. So you see from this statement that, you know, diversity is actually important for board oversight. So why? Having a board composed of individuals with different backgrounds and bringing varying perspective to board discussions is thus essential. Groupthink. This is the bad word. This is almost like the bad word in this topic, is that groupthink and tunnel visions are major barriers to a board carrying out its oversight role effectively. Yet, it is precisely the risk that a company with a board lacking diversity is exposing itself to. So you could see that from this statement that the real core is not about gender diversity. The real core is about board diversity. And why is board diversity important? Because it actually avoids group thinking and tunnel visions. Now, assuming we've got a company with academics as board of directors, you could see how good they would be in a business environment, unless they are applied business people or unless they have a niche. But if we introduce a few people with corporate experience, with design experience, then you can see the board being much more effective. So therefore, diversity is very important for a board. For example, if you've got a technology company and all the directors are 60-year-old people, what's the point? Are you not going to bring in some youth, some people with alternative thinking, some people with creative idea? So diversity is extremely important. So Amar goes on to say that Hong Kong aspires to be a leading international financial center and continues to have a key role as an international hub for the mainland and the region. But many companies here have an archaic concept of the role of boards. Female board presence is no more than at token levels, significantly below not just Australia, but Singapore and Malaysia within the APAC region. It beggars belief that women in Hong Kong have less relevant experience and are less capable to function in boardrooms compared to their peers in the region. I have to confess that, you know, if I look at my sister Datwani, she's actually far more cleverer than I am. So, you know, I think she's far more superior than I am. That's just an example. I'm sure that, you know, every one of us have around us people that are much better than us and who are of the other race and the other gender race. So why do we suddenly jump from gender diversity, as Amar says, to, from general diversity, as Amar says, to gender diversity in the next paragraph? The link really is this. If there is a board of directors that is significantly underwhelmed in terms of female representation, how then can you expect this board to actually be able to bring in other diversity elements? It speaks for itself. If the most obvious, and it is male-female is the most obvious issue of diversity, is not properly addressed, how could other issues of diversity be addressed? And therefore, you know, gender is extremely important as an aspect of diversity. So I just wanted to set the stage that this is a business proposition. Now, the second issue is that I know that, you know, a lot of people may not understand this completely, but in the business world, compliance is a major issue. So for a listed company, compliance with the listing rule is extremely important. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange is no more than an ordinary company. It is not created by statute. So what happened is when you want to list your company in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and I assume some of you have bought shares of companies listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, the company actually has to sign an agreement with the stock exchange. And the stock exchange is through this mechanism, this contractual mechanism, imposes its rules and regulations. So therefore, you know, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange is a very funny animal. It is both a business organization in itself that it needs to make more money. And how does it make more money? It gets more people to list. It gets into sorts of products development from people who list on their platform. And at the same time, they are regulators in the sense that they regulate the marketplace through this contractual arrangement. So they do this through something called listing rules. And now, under the listing rules, which all listed companies regard as mandatory because it's part of the contractual arrangement, it says this: the listing rules require every issuer to have a diversity policy and disclose the policy or a summary of it in the corporate governance report. So there's something called the corporate governance report. That corporate governance report has to have something called the diversity policy. And the diversity policy basically has to have a summary of its policies on diversity. And it is important to note that a diversity policy should include measurable objectives. That is, you know, what is it that you want to achieve? That the issuer means the listed company, has set for implementing the diversity policy, for example, those relating to gender, and progress on achieving those objectives. So this is actually a very detailed requirement that was introduced in 2019, only 2 years ago, which requires, you know, gender and other diversity issues to be addressed. So if you look at these little diagrams, actually in 2012, Peter and me again put together another report. Now we found in 2012 in Hong Kong that the choicest of directors is actually the gray hair. You see the gray hair here, with no hair. He's got a little bit more hair than I have, you know, but it's a little bit gray. So this is the gray accountant. They actually, the gray hair 56-year-old accountant makes up the majority of directors on boards of Hong Kong listed company. So that was 56 years old. So we in 2018, we looked at the issue again. And guess what was the average age of the director there? How much is 56 plus 6, everyone? Anyone raise their hand can answer that question. It's 62. So for the last 6 years, from 2012 to 2018, nothing has moved in Hong Kong board. Basically, the gray hair accountant is the choicest amongst directors. And it is understandable because the board of directors should contain a lot of independent directors who are actually financially savvy, but we know we can't get overboard or overboarded by that fact. But actually that is what is happening in Hong Kong. So that's why the stock exchange issued guidance in July 2018 for board and directors. And in there, they asked for this rule on measurable objectives for policy diversities. So if you look at the detail about what the diversity policy should include, it says that listed companies, so issuers are listed companies, should formulate their diversity policies in accordance with their own circumstances. They are encouraged to consider the following guidance. Articulate the benefits of diversity, including gender diversity. Now, so again, the whole drafting is that, well, talk about diversity, but also please talk about gender diversity because it is important. And the importance of being able to attract, retain, and motivate employees from the widest pool of available talent. You would now understand that, you know, you are all, a lot of you are actually in tertiary education. You would know how important it is to basically create candidates that are ready for employment. But at the same time, you would increasingly see that your candidates are demanding things that are more than money. They're demanding value. They are demanding things like diversity, etc. So these are very important issues that, you know, we on the other side, on the flip side, have to capture, which is, you know, what are talent wanting in this particular environment. So the first thing in the board policy or board diversity policy would be to articulate the benefits of including diversity. So it also should express the issuer's commitment to diversity at all levels, including gender, age, cultural, and educational background or professional experience. And now, again, you know, I start with the statement that if you can't get gender diversity correct, how do you expect age, cultural, and educational background or professional experience to be handled? It's extremely difficult. And then it's asked listed issuers to assess annually on each issuer's diversity profile, including gender balance of the directors and senior management and the direct reports, and in progress in achieving its diversity objectives. You can actually see that's why when you read some of these annual reports nowadays, you would start seeing little tables saying that how many male and how many percentage female do we have on the board of directors and in our general staff. This is actually all a regulatory development that the market has pushed for and the HKICS has adopted. So people like us right now on today and afterwards, if you write to the stock exchange, actually we are the people that actually could help push this topic along. So ensure that recruitment and selection practices at all levels, from the board downwards, are appropriately structured so that a diverse range of candidates are considered, and state whether the issuer has identified and implemented programs that will assist in the development of a broader and more diverse pool of skilled and experienced employee, and that in time their skills will prepare them for senior management and board positions. And then you got to look at all this, and it basically is covering existing listed companies. So basically, listed companies are grandfathered, and you are now trying to change them and the way that they are dealing with diversity by ensuring that this becomes an agenda item and has to be reported in the corporate governance report. So wouldn't it also be easier that you change the rules of the game, or at least, you know, enhance the rule of the game so people that are not yet listed, that are coming on board being listed? That's why, in parallel to developments relating to its existing listed companies, the stock exchange has done a lot of really good initiative, and I have to emphasize that they have done really very good work in this regard for new IPO candidates. So they issued a new guidance letter in April of 2020, sorry, updated to July of 2020, and its subject is Guide on Producing Simplified Listing Documents Relating to Equity Securities for New Applicants. Believe me, stock exchange rules, stock exchange guidance, stock exchange practices, requirements are anything but simple. But, you know, let's give them the self-gratification that, you know, they think that they're simplifying things, okay? It's actually very, very complicated. But this is one of the paper, and it runs tens of pages of complicated stuff. So I just picked up a little, which is on paragraph 3.5 and 3.6 of this guidance letter. So again, applicants should disclose a policy on board diversity, which actually is a listing rule requirements, as we can see. So where an applicant has a single gender board, that means an applicant who wants to get listed has the goal of saying that we want an all-male board. And I would not say all-female. I've never seen an applicant saying it's all-female. I'm sure we all readily will be enjoying that. So should disclose and explain how and when gender diversity of the board will be achieved after listing, what measurable objectives it has set for implementing gender diversity, for example, achieving a specific numerical target for the proportion of absent gender on its board by a certain year, and what measures the applicant has adopted to develop a pipeline of potential successor to the board that could ensure gender diversity of the board. So you could see that what is being done is that we don't want you, company, to come and list if you don't have a board with some female representation. But anyway, we know that we really can't force you. If you're good enough, company will still allow you to list, but you give us a plan. Is it 1 year, 2 year, 3 year down the line that you would have at least one female director? And I understand that the stock exchange is also thinking that maybe we should put this proposition across the board. That is, we really shouldn't have any company without any female representation. So a lot of kudos to the stock exchange for thinking of this particular approach. But is it enough will be a question, which we can talk about a little bit later. So where are we right now? Well, if you look at directors who are women on boards, we start in 2011 with 10.5%. We are now in 2020, 14.3%. So over the past 10 years, we've gone up 4%. And if you do a simple straight line, it's 0.4% increase per year on a simple basis, but on a compound annual basis, it's going to be much less. So are you impressed with Hong Kong's progress of gender diversity on Hong Kong boards? I mean, it is all very well if it's 1 in 2 or 1 in 3, but it's 1 in 7 right now. So it's pretty bad. It was formerly 1 in 9. So now we're 1 in 7. I wonder if it will take another 30 years before we get to 1 in 5, or 1 in 4, or 1 in 3. I mean, I don't know. I really should do the maths, but I'm not a mathematical person. But anyway, now, that's all very well if you take the snapshot up by itself. But if you look at a survey of 26 countries, guess where Hong Kong ranks? Hong Kong ranks 23 out of 26. I mean, you've got France, Sweden, Norway, Italy, Europe-wide, Finland, Belgium, UK, Australia, Canada, Netherlands, Germany, Spain, Denmark, Malaysia, Switzerland, South Africa, USA, Ireland. If I told you that Malaysia was actually on par with Hong Kong around 5 or 6 years ago, how surprised would you be? It's now almost 30%. So look at what Malaysia has done in the past few years. So if you look at this particular diagram, are we aspiring to be Japan, Russia, Brazil, which are lower than us? Actually, South Korea is also lower than us, but this particular table did not survey this. So the caveat is that, there is a survey by Bordic's Global Leadership Team on Gender Diversity in 2020, and they surveyed 26 countries, and we are 23 out of 26. Is that aspirationally right for Hong Kong as an international financial center? I have my answer, and I think you can figure out your answer to this particular question. So Hong Kong also trailed major competitors. If you look at these particular things, you can look at Singapore, not so really great, 18.4%. Hong Kong was 12.5 because this is taking 2019. I'm sorry that the data might be all over because the public data is all over, but this one is on 2019. At that stage, Hong Kong was 12.4%, and Singapore was 18.4%. So if you look at it, it's not a really good picture for Hong Kong, especially with some of the major listing jurisdictions. So then you might ask, okay, fine, if the market in Hong Kong really is dominated by large cap markets. So there are some very big companies like Tencent, CLP, CCB, China Construction Bank, etc. So we know that these are really large companies. Anyway, there are 50 large companies in Hong Kong, and they form something called the HSI, Hang Seng Index 50 Larger Companies, which, as you know, is going to be reformed to include more companies. But if you look at this, around 76% have one director, female, 40% have more than one, executive, 1/3 has executive. But look at this, 24% of these 50 companies, that means 1 in every 4 companies, do not actually have a female director, and 1 in 10 never ever had a director. But overall is again 1 in 7 people are females. So you could see that the majority, even when they have a female director, is 76%, means that they have 1 director who's female. So it's not a very rosy picture in Hong Kong. Now, of course, the normal size of the board would at least have 4 or 5 or 6 directors. Okay, so it comes to this point, do we do absolutely nothing? Do we allow this? I mean, Hong Kong Stock Exchange is doing not bad. We are trading really well. We are respected. We know that there are issues with U.S.-China relationships, and we would expect more people to come back for dual primary listing or to do secondary listing in Hong Kong. Whilst we know that diversity is business proposition, is a choice to do nothing. Now, doing nothing may be perfectly fine for someone, but doing nothing is not good for our institute and not good to a lot of people who's listening into this particular lecture. Otherwise, I assume that you will not be listening to this, and we all think that there is something that is social justice, but being a business case, I can't really emphasize social justice. I could only emphasize that there is a business case that we have to avoid group thinking, and thanks to Armagil, we know that doing nothing may not be the best scene for international investors. So international investors who want to make big investments in Hong Kong, they are concerned with this particular topic. So there we have Teresa Koh. I think a lot of you would know Teresa Koh. She's the former chairman of the listing committee of the stock exchange, and she's partner and China chairman of Freshfields. She openly says that she was against quota before, but she's changed her mind. Why was she against quota? Because like a lot of female here, there is a thought that we should be promoted because of meritocracy, not because of some rules and regulations. We are good, and we get to the top by working hard and being good. And other females should take us as role model and work hard and be good. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with meritocracy, but if a guy who thinks, might as well, if there's something that can enhance my position, I will enhance my position. Maybe there is a little bit of difference in thinking. Okay, so for a long time, even Teresa was saying that quota meritocracy may be better. Maybe we better persuade people, but she also thinks that now there's absolutely no way that we can move the needle in Hong Kong, and maybe quota. And she's actually admitted that she has changed her mind, and she's an absolutely wonderful person, okay? And she says, it has been over 10 years since voluntary disclosure of diversity policy by listed companies was first introduced in Hong Kong. Many efforts have been made since to encourage the appointment of more women on boards, including an upgrade of the requirement to publish a diversity policy, which is now a listing rule, which I quoted with you just now. Hong Kong's proportion of women on boards is still just at 13.7%. That means 1 in 7 as of July 2020. We are beyond debating whether diversity in the boardroom is a good thing or not. It is. Extensive academic research demonstrates that diverse boards are positively associated with improved governance and financial performance. Diversity also reduces groupthink and improves discussions and decision-making. Given the ongoing geopolitical, technological, climate, and societal challenges that almost every of the corporate faces these days, diversity of perspective and gender diversity will be critical to help improve board resilience and will also enhance investor confidence. Very, very clear call for a quota. A quota means a mandatory imposition of something you have to do. Now, that is a clear change in position from meritocracy to regulatory imposition. So quotas, and she continues, are simply a means to redress a structural imbalance. Globally, gender quotas range from requiring at least 1 or 2 women on boards right up to the jurisdictions that require boards to have 30 or even 50% female. On average, women accounts for 31% of board seats in countries with gender mandates or quotas. So quotas work. If we impose a quota, people follow that, and it is mandatory as a requirement for you to continue to be listed. So why don't we have quotas? If we rely on encouraging only new listed companies, new listed candidates, remember I told you about new IPO candidates, to have at least 1 female director, it will take Hong Kong 2,400 years to achieve 30% women on boards for all of its 2,500 plus listed companies. Now, I know people are challenging Teresa on her calculation, and Teresa is no mathematician, and she said this figure was given to her by some mathematician, okay? So leave that aside, don't take the 2,400 years as fact, written in stone, but it's going to take a long, long time, way before we all expire, that Hong Kong would achieve, 30% women on boards if it goes on that we only want to have at least 1 gender. So we don't want any single gender board. We just need 1 female on board. It will take forever. So quotas would need to stay in place forever. So quotas would not need to stay in place forever, just until the existing imbalance is redressed. Like it or not, Hong Kong's diversity will be benchmarked against other international financial hubs and increasingly against our Asian peers. So she goes on to say, corporates embracing diversity to enhance board resilience will attract even more women to join boards, and Hong Kong has ample women who can be nurtured internally for board positions. Hong Kong has the highest percentage of female managers in Asia at 39%, more than mainland at 35%. We are not short of female professionals. Now, why is she saying that? Because the common defense as to why there are no women on boards is that we cannot find candidates. So, and businesswomen who believe that they can make meaningful contributions to help boards. 6 years is a long time for corporates to embrace this change and for females to prepare these opportunities. So she says that, well, okay, we want a quota of at least 40% female within 6 years. So quotas would discourage unnecessary further debate. There'll be no ifs or buts. Quotas would allow flexibility on how companies implement the change. Ambition is important, she says. I favor a quota of 40%. We cannot assume other countries, including those in Asia, will not make progress over time. At 13.7%, we are starting from a low base. If we are determined to fix this and reap the benefits of more diverse boards, why strive to catch up? We should strive to lead, at least in Asia. So Fiona Knott, the Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Foundation, says this: it's time to act now. The Women's Foundation has been a long-time advocate for more diverse corporate boards since we launched in the 30% Club back in 2013, but change is not happening fast enough. In fact, progress is glacial. It should be a matter of deep disappointment to Hong Kong's community that the number of women on boards of Hang Seng Index companies is so low. Hong Kong now lags far behind both global financial centers and regional neighbors. More disturbing is the fact that approximately 1/3 of all listed companies in Hong Kong are without a single woman on their boards. This is simply not good enough. So, I mean, all this says that, the time for action is now. We must aim for 50% women on our boards. To get there, it's time for targets, meaningful targets of 25% by 2025 and 30% in 6 years. So you see that Fiona Knott is a little bit different from Teresa Ko in that she's asking for targets. Now, targets means that it is not a quota. That means it's not mandatory, but you still need to explain why is it that you have not achieved this. So the institute, which is our institute, suggests that the debate may be around a 30% voluntary target, a 6-year transition period, and that there should be a comply or explain regime. That is, comply with the 30% target or explain why is it that you cannot comply with it. So company has to be very specific as to why they cannot comply with 30% targets. They can't say that we can't find women candidates. They have to say that, well, we have tried this and we have tried that, and we are in this particular industry, and therefore, we cannot find any women candidates, which is very difficult to achieve. So we want really specific disclosures on this issue. So some haphazardous thoughts. I thought it's interesting for you to take a look at what Xi Jinping, President Xi Jinping says. She says, first, we need to minimize the impact of COVID-19 on women. Second, we need to strive for genuine gender equality. Third, we need to ensure that women advance to the forefront of our times. Fourth, we need to enhance global cooperation in advancing women's development. I know you would say that, well, the position in China is not as well, even for listed companies. But, they are actually doing quite well in generally promoting gender equality. So President Xi says, global development needs to be placed on a course that is more equal, inclusive, and sustainable. And women's development is an important criteria to gauge its progress. Protection of women's rights and interests must be the commitment at the national level. As we pursue post-COVID-19 recovery, we may create new opportunities for women to participate in decision-makings and be more involved in its national, economic, cultural, and social governance. We need to eliminate prejudice, discrimination, and violence against women and make gender equality a social norm and moral imperative observed by all. So it's His Excellency Xi Jinping, President, People's Republic of China. I just thought, I throw in a little bit about the landscape in China. And this is from Dr. Annie Wu, who's a very good friend of the Institute. She says, as a woman entrepreneur involved in the first joint venture in the mainland, and she is actually involved in the first joint venture in the mainland. Her license number is 0001, okay? I've enjoyed sitting on companies board, both in Hong Kong and in the mainland since 1980. I'm surprised that in the mainland, I've received more respect and equal treatment in the business sector than in Hong Kong, even though Hong Kong claims to be more cosmopolitan and international in its business approach. With my 40 years experience in engaging in joint venture in the mainland, as well as being involved in companies based in Hong Kong, I feel it is time for Hong Kong's business community to be more progressive in adhering to equal opportunity for both genders based on ability rather than on gender selection. It is important Hong Kong should improve and advance to consider practical gender diversity, especially on companies board, to ensure Hong Kong's progress as an international hub. Okay, so the Chief Executive in her 2018 policy address noted, we attached the importance to public participation and engagement, and she wanted the bureaus to have at least 30% non-official members who are female. I think I'll probably close with just this particular statement because I've been going a little bit slow and I wanted some time for answering. So this is another very good friend of ours, Fanny Law. So Mrs. Fanny Law says, Hong Kong's education system provides equal opportunity for young men and women to learn and to excel. Over the years, more and more women have joined the ranks of lawyers, engineers, architects, fund managers, and industrial designers, which used to be dominated by men. They have proved beyond doubt that given the opportunity, women are equally competent. There are ample examples in both business and politics around the world where women have reached the top and are leading with great success. Hong Kong prides itself on being a progressive society, but we lag behind in female representation at the senior executive level and the boardroom in listed companies. So being a small economy, Hong Kong needs to make it the fullest of available talents. There is a large pool of well-qualified women with yet untapped potential to enrich the management of listed companies. I know from personal experiences the benefit of diversity in any organization and fully support greater female representation at the highest level of management and in the boardroom. So in summary, I quoted Edith Shi. She is actually executive director at CK Hutchison and our past international president. So if you have time, please take a look at the quote. And then I also looked at what our president, who's actually the legal and governance director at MTRC, said. So I think I should move on to question and answer.
Thank you, Mr. Datwani. That was a really interesting presentation and a lot to digest and take in as well in terms of looking at diversity on Hong Kong boards. So now we'll get into the Q&A session. People can type in your questions or comments in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. So any questions or comments? Well, I can start with a question. Actually, it was really interesting hearing your presentation. I'm wondering if there's very much a cultural factor involved in all of this. I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming there's a lot of Chinese companies on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And you also mentioned, that a lot of other Asian countries other than like Malaysia ranks behind Hong Kong, like South Korea and Taiwan. So I'm wondering if there's sort of like a cultural factor involved in sort of the report on how maybe because Asian people or if there's a cultural factor, is there such a factor involved when you were looking at this report?
We didn't look at that in the report, but generally, since I've been in this business for so long, I can give you some observations. Okay, the first thing is that men and women think differently. I mean, genuinely, for a man, if there is a policy, we will take it. We will not debate about, why is it that, we should have a policy. We would just want the policy. It is a very male thing, okay? Mm-hmm. But for the female, initially, this issue about gender diversity did go to the listing committee. And the people that were most vocal about against imposition of quota is actually the female listing committee members, because they feel that, we came here based on meritocracy. Therefore, people should be more issues orientated. They should try to work harder. We should try to persuade companies to understand the good and bad, the moral justice, the business case, etc. So, I mean, in a way, the listing committee, the most vocal opponents against imposition of quota was actually female. You got to ask yourself, hey, if there's something that enhances my position, or at least my species or my type of people, would I not want to promote that? But I don't get it, okay? Because I'm a male, I'm deficient, okay? But there is that issue. So just male and female, Venus and Mars, etc. There's an issue there. The second issue really is culture. There is a little bit about culture, but you find it's very interesting. At the end of the day, the rule of the game about listed company simply are the rules of the game under the listing rules. And therefore, that could easily change. A mainland listed company, if the rules and regulation requires there to be one female, then they would have one female. Or if they want more, they would have more. There's no issue whatsoever. So yes, there is cultural, but this is more business. And business people really want to be seen to be complying with rules and regulations and being the good boy. And so, yes, it is a mix of culture. So I didn't really answer your question, Jackie, but I mean, culture, yes. There are some country with very big male dominance, etc. You can understand that. But in Hong Kong, there's absolutely no reason why. I'm very afraid of a lot of female, but and very respectful of them as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we just had a question come in from the chat box from Datwani.
Oh, what's this?
It's surprising that Malaysia is ahead of Hong Kong, being a Muslim country, and also knowing they require Malays on board in partnership and businesses. How is that possible?
I mean, exactly. How is that possible? We got to sit down and scratch our. I mean, I got no hair here, but I'm trying to scratch it. You know, how is it that Malaysia has done this? So the first thing is you must understand the process of identifying female board of directors is actually done by the nomination committee. So if you got an all-male nomination committee who is like left free to, consider whatever they want, they're probably going to bring in a male who's similar to them. It's so easy to bring in a person who's see eye to eye instead of being engaged in constructive challenges in it. So in a way, it's because the directors themselves may be too complacent. They might not be able to think of other criteria. They don't understand this and that. But actually, in Malaysia, the government did push. The government wants 30% diversity. While they didn't impose a quota, they actually put it, I think, as a target. So there is something there. So it's not just because out of goodness that this happened. There is a push there as well. So Hong Kong needs a push. I mean, you can debate whether it's, like what we have right now, encouragement. And if it's not working, do we continue to encourage to no ends for the next 2,400 years, according to Teresa? Or just do a little bit, which is to change new entrants into the marketplace? Or do we impose some target, which is, a way it's persuasion, but, a more aggressive form of persuasion? Or do we actually put in quotas, which is what Teresa Cole is arguing for? So I don't know. But I mean, Sophia Cao, who's on this call, she actually wrote in 2011 as the head of the Women's Commission to the stock exchange, saying that we need to do something. I don't know if there's anybody that disagrees that we need to do something here, but if it is something so common, so why can't we do something about this? It's just wrong.
Yeah, and furthering on your the point about quotas, and in terms of, do you think quotas will in terms of moving the needle, do you think quotas will move the needle faster in a sense? So we're not, moving at a 2,400 years type of pace. So is there like a lot of push for that, for stronger action for the government or the exchange to try to, move that needle faster than what it's been for the past 10 years?
We never ever had quotas. So basically the argument against quota is that, meritocracy, we should base our selection of directors based on merits, not based on some requirement. That was a traditional thinking. 10 years ago, if you ask Teresa Cole or a lot of people, they would say that, well, quota is no good. Now, that was because the marketplace, we were around the same. It was like 1 in 9, 1 in 10 directors are female. This was all over the marketplace. Then Norway came and said that we need 30% quota. Norway was the first country, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to say that we need 30% quota. And so we started from there. And then they changed and everybody started following. But Hong Kong was a laggard. And if you compare major listing jurisdictions, which doesn't include South Korea or Japan, if you consider Hong Kong is at rock bottom. So quotas, yes, it will move. Because quota is a regulatory imposition. The timing, you have to comply with it or you're in breach. And if you're in breach, you can be sanctioned. You'll be publicly censured. Your reputation will suffer. Investors will look at it. So there are a whole host of consequences. Yes, completely, it will not be 2,400 years. And Teresa is saying the next 6 years. We are asking also for targets for the next 6 years. Frankly, we want it much earlier, but we understand that there is an excuse that there might not be enough female talent. And therefore, 6 years is definitely more than important, more than enough time. So some of your graduates could be directors.
Let's hope so. We also had another question come in through the chat from Allison. Is there a route or route that women commonly take to find their way on boards? For example, do many start on nonprofit boards?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, you know. One of the issue really is that now, okay, so most of the directors that are coming on board are actually directors of companies that are in senior management positions that retired. Okay, so if you ask me, there are actually a lot of female candidates who retire and who actually join boards. Is it good to be on an NGO board? Yes, absolutely, because there is something called boardroom dynamics. When you sit on a board, like I've been a board member, you can understand there is need to be able to constructively challenge people. So you want to be sitting across the table to someone, contributing your idea, but in a way that is not offensive, in a way that is persuasive, in a way that, you know, as you say, matches the culture, because the culture of an organization is implicit. An outside person can never understand it. It's only an insider. So there are ways, there are norms of behavior, and truly, you know, it really depends on what is it that, you know, the person wants. So for example, if I am an aviation company, I might want to find a female pilot who understands the delivery of, you know, safety. So it is important to be able to do what you do well and to understand basic business concepts. It helps to have actually been in a business. Running an organization like an NGO or other can never harm you. But is there a preferred route? A bit of formal training is good, but it doesn't mean that you have to have an MBA or you have to have something else, because it's about going out there, meeting different people, talking to people, getting more and more experience in topics, and eventually, you know, what find its own level, you'll be figured out by some headhunters, and then, you know, you get on board. So the headhunters are now basically putting forward at least 30% female candidates to listed companies, and listed companies seems to be making an effort to try to increase diversity. So I really couldn't answer, is there a particular path, but I think it's all paths, all ability, or demonstrations, or noises that you can make that are important.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone else? We'll actually have one sort of going off your point. Oh, let me see, what is this? Yes, we have another question. May we get your thoughts on why Hong Kong is in a slow pace to promote more women on boards? I'm sorry. Yeah, she came late, but
you know, it is bewildering, actually. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, my institute has 70%, around 70% female. My boss is a female. Everyone sitting here, I mean, joining this particular lecture, there are a lot more female than male. You guys are intellectually, I think, for me, superior to me, okay, at least. So, I mean, I really don't get it. Why is the position so bad? And, you know, as Annie Wu said, in China, she feels that she's treated with more respect than in Hong Kong. But I also see, you know, things changing in Hong Kong. I really feel that, you know, the time is now that the stock exchange is really looking at this particular issue. These people on the slides, if you look at these people, which is BlackRock, Freshfields, 30% Club, Women Foundation, Brunswick, Community Business, New World, Egon Center, BCT, Link REIT. These are really important people. And I think there's actually a lot of will. And yeah, I mean, I was just talking about this issue with people, and I always tend to say, don't look at what happened in the past. Don't ask. Just move forward. Moving forward, you know, if we collectively as a group determine that this is wrong. We need to get it better. Yet, we understand that there are challenges, because if you have a wholesale change, there's an issue. So can we not compromise? So we thought target was a compromise. If you think that 30% is too much, why not by 2025 25% or 20% or etc. So we can think of ways, but it takes collectively each individual. Now, this is my call to all of you. There is going to be a consultation paper issued on this topic by the stock exchange, and the way that they deal with consultation is that if 9,000 people sign on the same submission, it's counted as one submission. But if 9 people sign different letters and talk about different points but with the same conclusion, that's treated as 9 submission. So there was a particular proposal which we were against, and I think there was like 90-something people, or not, a couple hundred people that wrote in, and then eventually the stock exchange gave in, or at least didn't change the position. But so the game is also a numbers game. So each one of you can help. Even if you don't know the topic well, if you think that gender diversity is important, we should have a quota system, or we should have a target system, then just say that to the stock exchange.
Yeah, I think that's what's so great about your report, is just raising awareness about the fact that there is such an issue of gender diversity on boards. As you mentioned earlier, like there's no shortage of female managers in Hong Kong. So I think it's great that we should all sort of be aware of this issue and think about how we can ameliorate this situation. I think we also have a comment from Simon. I think Hong Kong in general isn't great on a lot of things related to supporting diversity. Example, gender, LGBT, ethnic minorities, still a very patriarchal society.
Yeah, that's why I'm on the Equal Opportunities Commission. I mean, I have written something on the Ariana magazine on transgender protection. Our law is inadequate, because when you come into minority protection field of LGBTI, I mean, why on earth should we discriminate someone because they got different sexual preferences, which is the LGB, or they have different belief in different their gender belief is different. I mean, I do subscribe it being a continuum of this issue, but that's not the topic for today. I can tell you that the Equal Opportunities Commission is about equal opportunities. So we are thinking of submitting a paper to the government to protect LGBTI from employment, club access, facilities, etc. So, but not marriages, okay? Because that's the policy decision. But on the equal opportunities, which is traditionally covered by the EOC, we are taking a 12 to 18 months approach to write into the government for proposals to change. We just recently changed the law on sexual harassment so that there's no direct, even when there's no direct employee relationship, it applies. So for example, a customer in a restaurant sexually harassing a waitress would not be covered. So we are doing things at the EOC to try to improve the situations. And we always welcome comments and ideas. So change is inevitable, but it's slow, but it will happen.
Thank you. We also have another question. Do you think the pandemic will have an impact on this issue, maybe further slow the process?
I mean, this is the odd thing, we, the Institute, argue that, we should have hybrid meetings, electronic meetings, etc. 4 or 5 years ago. Now, when the pandemic first came, everybody was like, oh, this is not the way to do business. We need to meet people. We're going to die if we don't meet people. Our supply chain will be destroyed, etc. Never came to pass. I think human ingenuity is that we adapt and we survive. And I can tell you that it's almost like business as usual, aside from the restaurants and the bars, depending on how many people we need to check for COVID now, on the relaxation, which is quite interesting proposition. Okay, but depending on things that we are doing, it is actually not really that essential on moving the needle on this particular topic. This particular topic is almost a given that everybody agrees. I think even the stock exchange agrees that more needs to be done. The details right now is how, the niceties, what is it that needs to be done?
Thank you so much. So if there are no more questions or comments from the audience, I think we can sort of conclude the presentation for today. I want to thank you again, Mr. Datwani, for a very interesting talk on this issue, and this very important issue. And I think we all have a lot to think about and digest on this diversity of boards in Hong Kong. And I hope we can move the needle further to promote this issue and have action involved on gender diversity on the boards. I also want to thank the host, the Committee on Gender Equality and Diversity, who is the host of this knowledge exchange event. So thank you to the committee and also to Mr. Datwani for your very interesting presentation. If there are any further questions or comments, we can definitely leave it in the chat later, or we can have the committee go further with the questions. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you again, Mr. Datwani.